Well, good morning, brave and beautiful patriots. Welcome to This Way Network. Welcome to the chat session. Today, I'm joined by the lovely fellow veteran, Jennifer. How are you doing today?
Good. How are you doing, Ben?
I'm doing fantastic. Fridays are always a great day because I'm off from work. It gives me a chance to get caught up on grading and planning for the next week and doing these sessions right here.
Yeah,
How has your week been?
it's been very busy. I make signs, and so that's what I've been working on this week because
Ooh,
Christmas is coming, and so I
nice.
got a lot of stuff on my plate. I think I got like 12 orders out in the last 2 days.
That's fantastic. So is that like your little side gig or is that your full-time thing?
Well, that's my full time thing. My husband has a regular job, and he's actually out of town this week, which is why I've kind of been getting so much stuff out, trying to
Right,
get caught up so I can enjoy the weekend with him. He's
right.
coming back today.
That's awesome. My wife has a little side gig in making dog treats, and so that's her passion. So she really
Mhm.
enjoys that.
All right.
All right. So Patriots, as y'all have noticed, in China, things are getting pretty crazy. Uh, Last video I saw on YouTube was like a day ago, and it showed the people rising up and protesting against tyranny. That's all it is. The people are finally fed up with China's tyrannical policies, President Xi's tyrannical policies. And we don't know what's happening. It's still very fluid. It's still thousands and thousands of people fighting against an oppressive rule. And so today, I just want to get Jennifer's thoughts on this. We'll talk a little bit about the China's actual constitution, what it really says, and then yeah, go from there.
Well, first, I just want to start off and say this is what they're doing right now in China. They have so little freedom of speech and expression that they can't have any sort of slogans on, or they'll be arrested. But they have been holding up a white piece of paper that, as a symbol of their dissatisfaction, and I love that. Everybody can be involved in this. This does not. This is the ultimate in grassroots. This is not those pre-printed protest signs from the Summer of Love back in 2020, where millions of dollars was pouring in from who knows who. This is the people finding paper and getting into the streets, and this is what they're doing to show their dissatisfaction. I love it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you for that. That's fantastic. A lot of people don't know this, but if you go back in history, in 1989, the Tiananmen Square massacre, the same thing happened. Thousands and thousands of Chinese citizens were fed up. They were pissed off that they were not given the basic human right of freedom of speech to say what they want, to voice their concerns, to protest, to, keyword, address the government with their grievances. And what happened? Government came down and they massacred, I think, almost everyone.
Yeah. And in China, you have no knowledge that that happened. You said that it was 1989, I believe.
89, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I was just graduating high school then. It, and I remember that. Yeah.
Wow.
But if you didn't live it, no one in China knows that anymore. It's all been completely scrubbed from the history and the internet. You can't search for it. And we have American companies that are complicit in helping the Chinese erase this history. Google has search terms that can't be searched. Apple has certain apps that can't be accessed.
Mm,
You can't do AirDrop now anymore. That's something that just came out in the last few days that Apple has removed that ability. I don't have an Apple phone, but from what I understand with Apple's AirDrop, you can basically share internet and share files phone to phone,
yeah.
which makes it difficult for the CCP to track what's going on. So they
Mm,
couldn't have that. So Apple is helping the Chinese kind of squash what's going on there, and it's still
right.
happening anyway.
Yeah.
That's what's really serious about what's going on right now.
Absolutely. And whenever I teach my government classes, we talk about the Bill of Rights. We talk about the freedom of speech. And I have my students actually look at different constitutions around the world. There's a wonderful website called constituteproject.org. This website lets you actually read every constitution in the world. You can look at every country, click on it, and you can see right there what's written. And some of them have outdated constitutions, Afghanistan, but the constitution for China, it's current. And if this is what's crazy, it blew my mind. When you scroll down to Article 51, it literally says this. It says, the exercise by citizens of the People's Republic of China, Republic, their freedoms and their rights may not infringe upon the interests of the state. It literally says that.
Before Article 51. And honest about it.
Yeah, at least they're upfront. At least they say it. But up until that point, they give you a huge laundry list, all the rights and freedoms that China citizens have. Hey, you can say what you want. You can believe in what you want. In China, you get free education, free healthcare, a roof over your head. Awesome, right? Wait for it. Until the very bottom, it says, oh, by the way, all these rights, yeah, just don't talk bad about the government. Okay? Okay. Just don't conflict with the government's interests, the state's interests. Well, as we've seen in the past and as we're seeing right now, talk about bravery. These Chinese people are quite literally violating their constitution.
Yeah.
Because they dare to speak for themselves. So what are your thoughts on that? Having a constitution that legit just says that?
Well, that's really scary. And America, I feel, is maybe kind of skirting with that as well, that there are so many things that we are not allowed to say anymore because it's in conflict with, might be misinformation. But, just like how, China says that you can't say things that are against the interests of the state. The question is, who decides what's against the interest of the state? So once you have an exception, that's just a little tiny bit of a foothold that can be pried wide open and totally take away every bit of free speech, because you can't talk maybe about certain medical decisions. You can't talk about certain religious decisions. You can't talk about any number of things because it might be perceived as being against the interests of the state.
Right. And so in that same class where I teach my students in government, I ask them, okay, now that you've read the Constitution, look at which countries allow South Park. It's a random question, right? But this is, I've discovered this is a wonderful way to tell if free speech is allowed.
Mm-hmm.
If a country bans South Park, you know you do not have free speech. It sounds silly, but if you actually think about it, it makes a lot of sense. America, as broken as we are and as many flaws as we have, South Park still exists, which means there are people that still have that crazy, hilarious mindset that will call out modern day issues. I'm not saying I like South Park altogether.
Yeah.
But I respect the fact that they call out modern day issues and they don't care how you feel. They will say what they want. They don't care. And they've been on since the early 90s, late 80s, I believe. They've been on for a while.
Yeah.
So point being, the next thing I wanted to go into was our unique shared perspective. So you are a veteran. Can you tell the audience when you served and what branch you're in?
I joined the reserves right out of high school, and then I became an officer out of college. So from 89 to 99 were my service years. And active duty, I was in Germany for a good part of that. When I was in Germany, I also got sent down to Bosnia as part of the I4 implementation forces.
Yeah.
I think that was all about the time that the blue dress happened in Kosovo, and it was kind of like hey, let's go do something over here so we don't pay attention to what's happening here domestically.
don't, don't look over there. Don't look
Mhm.
over there. It's fine. It's fine.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for your service. I
Thank you.
very much appreciate that. I was in the Air Force. I joined straight out of high school. I was in for just under 9 years, and I got out in 2015.
Mhm.
So a slight generational gap, but all veterans have one thing in common. We were all willing, not just to serve our country, but we were willing to be government property.
Mhm.
And no matter how you twist it, no matter how you look at it, that's the reality.
Mhm.
When you serve a country, you are agreeing to be government property.
Yeah.
Now, this is where it gets interesting. To those of you who are listening, when you serve in the military, you get a lot of pretty awesome benefits. I'm not gonna lie. You get an amazing security blanket that takes care of all your needs. Free medical, free healthcare, free education, all of these things. A steady paycheck. But there's always a cost. You know, in your opinion, what do you think that price is? We get all these things while we're serving, but what is expected of us?
Well, we have to be able to leave at a moment's notice. We've got to be able to deploy to who knows where and be away from family. I was away from family for a whole year
Mhm.
in Bosnia, and back then we didn't have the internet like we do today. I mean, I was able maybe to get a hold of a phone and call back home maybe once a month.
Mm.
It was expensive, and the lines were really long because everybody wanted to use those few phones that we had available over there in Bosnia.
Right,
Also,
right,
you do have limits on your freedom of speech because for the chain of command and morale and all that, you can't be questioning your political leaders in the way that that people who aren't wearing the uniform can, because
right,
we can't be like, as military, say, all right, advocating for the overthrow of the government. No, we can vote, but we can't
right,
be do engage in political speech like that.
right, right. And it gets even more interesting when you realize that you can't put in 2 weeks' notice if you don't like the job. You can't say, "I quit." No, no.
Yeah.
You're reporting for duty at 0700, whether you like it or not. So the exchange of basic freedoms to serve, that's what happens for every person who joins the military. But here's the difference, though. When you look at America compared to China, China requires military service.
Mm.
That's part of the Constitution. In fact, a lot of countries around the world mandate military service for a certain amount of years. What's different, though, is after your obligatory military service, in other countries, you go back to being a private citizen and you have rights as a private citizen of that country. But it seems to me that in China, after you finish your military service, you're still serving the country. You're not given a choice in that. Hence, going back to what I just said, you can say what you want as long as it doesn't conflict with the interests of the state.
Yeah, it's kind of like trying to figure out what conflicts with YouTube policies. It's like
Ooh,
changing all the time. It's like you don't
right.
necessarily know when you're going to get that strike and why. What did I say this time? Was my inflection wrong? Making it a political statement versus just a parody, which might be allowed, depending on whether you're Babylon Bee or JP Sears or something. But
Right. Or in my situation for my channel, I got struck because I was in front of a flag that just had "Let's Go Brandon." That was
okay.
it. That was it. That was like a long time ago. But then you brought up a great point though.
You froze, Ben. I
When you
can't wait for
compare,
you.
I'm sorry, what'd you say?
You're back on. You froze after you said you brought up a good point, and then I didn't hear what you said.
Oh, I apologize. So basically, when you look at the People's Republic of China and you see how much control the centralized government has, and then compare that to America. Again, we have a federal government, absolutely, but we also have state governments.
Mhm.
we also have this thing called state sovereignty, where every
Mhm.
state, for better or for worse, can do their own thing. And so, on one hand, some people in certain states might be wary of big tech. They might be extra careful, what they say and what they do. But the other states, like Texas, is like, yo, big tech. Yeah, you guys are considered utilities. So you cannot just ban someone because of their political opinion. And
Yeah,
so,
Florida too. Florida's got has
right,
passed a law about that also.
right. And that's absolutely fascinating. And that gives me hope that no matter what happens at the federal level, you will always have state sovereignty, which is actually led by the people in that state. Again, for better or for worse,
Hmm.
with everything going on in Arizona right now, that's a state sovereignty issue. And so I'm very curious to see how all this plays out. But my biggest fear is that we're going to have another Tiananmen Square.
Yeah, we need to keep the people in China in our prayers because right now, so far as I've heard, there has not been massacres, but there have been police beatings already. There have been, video being recorded of these protesters getting violent pushback from the police. One of the things that started all of this was their policy of zero spread of that disease that started back in 2020. And they have welded people into their apartments. They have
I heard about
barricaded
that.
doors. And there was a fire in a high rise where at least 10 people were killed, including a child. And that's part of the spark that started this, but it has since spread to multiple cities. And I think that just started sometime around the Thanksgiving timeframe is when this happened. It was on Thanksgiving Day that this fire started, and it's been spreading like a wildfire.
Yeah.
And they're going to the Chinese government is going to reach a point where they're going to have to show their strength again, because there's other political things going on with the Taiwanese as well, and the
Right.
Chinese government cannot be perceived as being weak on this.
Right.
So we got to pray for the people that that they're kept safe and that this actually affects peaceful change. But I have my doubts about it.
And of course, you raise up the word doubts. One thing that the military taught me is the ability to smell BS.
Hmm.
I'm really good at that. I'm really good at listening to people and determining, they're either authentic, they're honest, or they're full of crap.
Hmm.
Now, of course, all the media is coming together to support China. It's like, wait, hold up. You're supporting the Chinese people fighting back against a tyrannical government. Where have you been for the past 2 years?
Yeah.
Right? And so that just goes back to that level of hypocrisy that
Hmm.
people like us are very aware of when you just open your eyes and look at it. Like earlier, you mentioned that all mentions of the Tiananmen Square has been erased from China, basically, right? Yet, the grand, huge painting of Mao Zedong is still there.
Hmm.
That's still apparent.
Hmm.
When you go, and I have my students do this in my class, I have them go on Amazon, and I tell them, type in this image, and it is a certain image that was used during Germany during World War II.
Hmm.
Okay, they type in that image next to the word T-shirt. I'm just curious, is there anything like that on Amazon? And guess what? There isn't.
Hmm.
One, you'll find like the image horizontal, which is for Hinduism and like religious things. But that tilted image is nowhere to be found for T-shirts, anything like that. Okay, I get that, sure. But then if you type in Soviet Union T-shirt, that image, that hammer and sickle image,
That's allowed, and that's killed quite a number of people. I could
hundreds.
argue that they've killed more people. It's been
Yeah.
going on a heck of a lot longer.
Well, whenever you read the work of Alexander Solzhenitsyn in the Gulag Archipelago, you quickly learn around 66 million deaths just due to the gulags.
Mm-hmm.
But that hammer and sickle image,
Mm-hmm.
hundreds of results,
Mm-hmm.
pages and pages on Amazon. You can go on Amazon, like the most capitalistic website out there, and you can buy T-shirts with the hammer and sickle image on it.
Well, you mentioned that band symbol that you can't find on Amazon.
Yeah.
Elon Musk, who we thought was going to bring about this new era of open and free speech,
Mhm.
just banned Ye for having a variation of that symbol because it was a bridge too far for him. He said, and so his account's been suspended again as of last night. Now, I won't agree with anything Kanye said. I listened to that interview that he had on AJ's show, and I don't agree with anything he said. He's a very scary.
Right.
It's very scary, some of the things that he holds to, and that there are people who are going to follow along with what he has to say just because it's him. But the thing is that if he's still going to say those things, he's going to find an outlet to say them in. And if we don't have it where everybody else is that can push back against it in a peaceful and open debate, then it's just going to fester under the surface somewhere else. And so I'm really disappointed that Elon Musk has basically pushed it underground instead of being able to air it out and allow cooler heads to prevail, hopefully, and hold him up to ridicule. Now he is a martyr instead of being held up for ridicule.
That's a great point. Being held up for ridicule, for being able to have those conversations and those discussions in the open. You know, I'm still on the fence. On one hand, I do think Elon's takeover was a good thing to happen in the long run. On the other hand, I too made that observation. I was like, well, you know, how are we going to manage this? How are we going to determine what is okay in that virtual town square? You're either for free speech or you're not.
Well, even a billionaire is going to have to answer to the U.S. government. And that is what the pressure is on Elon, is that, yeah, he owns Twitter. He can make up his rules. But then you have Apple and Google who are threatening to pull the app from the App Store, and you've got the government threatening to investigate. So, you know, do we have much more free speech than the Chinese that are holding up a blank piece of paper?
And you know what? That's a great way to segue into this, because here's the difference. And it's fine. I keep mentioning my classes, but I'm a full-time teacher. I mean, that's all I do.
Right. Yeah.
So here's the difference between us and every other country out there. The only thing stopping our government from becoming China, Canada, Australia, Germany even, is the Second Amendment. That's it. In my opinion, that's the barrier. That's the only thing stopping our government from becoming full tyrannical, because the moment they try it, it's gonna get crazy. Because then you're going up against the most heavily armed populace in the world.
Yeah.
And so, you know, that's why no one's ever tried to invade our countries, because they know they're gonna lose.
Yeah.
I mean, well, they might be able to take over California, Oregon, Seattle, but
I don't know. Every single one of my neighbors, they're not going to mess with us here in California.
Yeah.
So
if they're coming down to the south, no. I was just saying, if they come through the south or the deep south or the southeastern seaboard, no, they're not going to be able to.
No.
But
the problem is that also those of us with 2A, you know, exercising our 2A rights, we're also law abiding. And that's part of the problem, is that when we have these red flag laws and we have the narrative coming down that, oh, well, this was for their safety. This was because they broke this particular law. It's one at a time that they're coming. I had a neighbor who had a restraining order placed against him by his certifiably mentally ill daughter-in-law. They came and took all his guns. And it was months that he did not have them. what happens then? You know, he followed the law, and then when he finally got him back, he had to pay a lot of money that he didn't have.
Mhm.
There was he went to court and said, look, the judge immediately threw it out. It's like, no, this is ridiculous. But it was that time frame. It was months before he got a court date.
Right.
And he had no redress. The crazy daughter-in-law wasn't forced to pay the fees.
Mm-hmm.
And it's ridiculous. And that's, the concern. We have to use this right first.
Right. That's a great point. And that's why it came first.
Yeah.
You look at the order of the Bill of Rights, that there's a reason that why it came before the second one.
Mm-hmm.
And you can thank my boy TJ, Thomas Jefferson, as many flaws as he has, as broken of a man as he was, he at least understood that you cannot have an over-encompassing large government. You have to have it tempered with rights that cannot be taken away.
Yeah.
Sadly, when you see other countries, you actually read their constitutions, it's crazy. Oh, and if you think China's is bad, read North Korea's. North Korea has a constitution. If you read it, it's hilarious, but it's also insane how blatantly corrupt and tyrannical it is.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, we are almost done with the show. We got 4 minutes left. Is there anything you want to plug in? Any big things you want the people to take away from this chat session?
Well, I think we also need to look at Iran.
Good point.
The FIFA World Cup, and that they are a part of this. That's also what fed into what's going on in China, is that soccer is like the number one thing around the world. Right. And China, with all their censorship, is able to see these crowds. Apparently the Chinese government was trying to blur the crowds, but they could still see that these people aren't wearing masks. What's going on here? But in Iran as well, Iran tried to get the United States banned out of playing because they didn't show part of their flag or whatever, and because we're in solidarity with their protesters over there. Right. But this is not. I'm very thankful that America's enemies seem to be having this internal implosion. That these are people that, if they were strong, they can certainly be causing trouble, especially with what's going on in Russia and the Eastern European areas. So we can be thankful for this. I hope it goes peacefully, but it could very well turn south quickly. And what are we going to do if that happens?
Right. And so all I can really do is only what I can control, and what I can control is my ability to research, mm-hmm. to learn, to understand. I can choose to be ignorant and naive.
Mm-hmm.
Sadly, a lot of people are choosing that path. Or I can choose to wake up and, smell the BS when I see it and just educate myself. And so that when the time comes that I am the enemy or I am in the iron sights, I'll know how to defend myself.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've done my research, because I've looked up what I'm trying to learn. And again, my hopes and prayers do go out to the people of China. I know a lot of Christian missionaries over there are being persecuted. They have been persecuted for years, but they're going through a rough time right now as well.
Because Christianity has always been against the interests of the state of the
right
communist China.
Yeah, absolutely. And that hammer and sickle image
mm-hmm. is
so embraced by a new generation in our country. Sadly, they don't know how horrific that symbol really is.
Yeah.
So anyways, well, Patriots, thank you so much for coming on This Way Network. Great seeing y'all again. I know Michael from Sweet Home Maricopa, he usually has a plug-in and some links. I don't have that. This is just, thank you for coming on. Greatly appreciated. Jennifer, do you have any last closing words?
Just God bless America. Know your Constitution, know what your rights are, and call it out when you see it. We've got to help spread this information. And again, if you don't use your First Amendment to its fullest, we may be forced to try to make use of our Second Amendment. And we don't want to go that way.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Everybody have a great weekend. Never surrender, never submit. Take care, guys.
God bless.